Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started.
It's great to be back. And today we are diving into a story that, I mean, honestly, it just shouldn't be real.
It really shouldn't. We're unpacking a book called A Marriage at Sea by Sophie Elmhirst. Now, if you just, look at the cover or read the blurb, you'd think you're in for a standard survival thriller.
Oh, absolutely. You know the type. Tiny boat, huge ocean, disaster strikes.
And people have to eat raw fish to survive, that whole thing.
Right. It ticks all those cinematic boxes. You've got a shipwreck, a 40-foot sperm whale, 117 days adrift on a rubber raft. I mean, it's all there.
But that's the thing. If you go into this expecting just a survival manual or some kind of action movie, you are going to be so surprised.
Yeah. Because Elmhirst, she isn't just documenting a disaster. The source material frames this not as man versus nature, but as a really microscopic, intense look at a very specific and, frankly, very strange marriage.
That is exactly what hooked me. This is actually a love story. But, we're not talking about a rom-com, butterflies in the stomach kind of love story.
No, not at all.
It's claustrophobic, it's messy, it's sometimes darkly funny, and it's about two people, Maurice and Maralyn Bailey, who were, you could argue, obsessed with each other to the exclusion of, the entire rest of the world.
Exactly. And to understand how they managed to survive on a leaking raft for nearly 4 months, you can't just look at their survival gear. You have to look at their psychology.
Yeah.
Because on paper, they were an incredibly unlikely pair.
Let's unpack them first, because the contrast between them is it's delicious. So Maurice, the book paints him as this detached bachelor.
Detached is putting it mildly. Maurice is a fascinating case study. He had a background that really explains a lot of his later behavior on the boat. He had a brutal childhood.
Right, he was a sickly kid.
Sickly kid, battled tuberculosis, but the real defining factor of his life was his mother. She was described as just incredibly strict.
There's a detail in the notes that I honestly found horrifying. It says his mother used to make him copy out the dictionary.
Page by page. And it wasn't just busy work. It was a punishment regime. She would stand over him with a ruler. If he made a mistake, his handwriting wasn't perfect,
She'd hit him.
she'd swat him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nightmarish.
It is. And it's the kind of discipline that either completely breaks a child's spirit or it forces them inward. For Maurice, it created a man who was obsessed with precision, very withdrawn, and deeply uncomfortable with the messy unpredictability of other people. He wanted control.
Because his childhood was so out of control. So, fast forward, he's working at a printing press in Derby. And get this, he's arranging text blocks backwards. That fits that need for precision perfectly.
He's basically resigned himself to being alone. He calls himself a detached bachelor. And then crashing into his life comes Maralyn.
Maralyn is the chaos to his order, the complete opposite. Totally. She's driving around in a big Vauxhall Cresta, which is a statement car. She's working in a tax office. She's outgoing, charming. And this is crucial for this story. She was a notoriously terrible swimmer.
Wait, hold on. She wanted to sail the world, but she couldn't swim.
She actually refused to learn. It wasn't that she couldn't, she wouldn't. Her logic was, frankly, terrifyingly optimistic. She figured if the boat went down, she'd probably just figure it out in the moment.
That is a choice.
Yeah.
That is some serious optimism. Or denial. So how do these two even meet? It sounds like Maurice would have run a mile from someone like her.
Oh, it was force on him. A friend from his gym couldn't make it to a car rally and begged Maurice to fill in. And Maurice was absolutely terrified. The source says he was convinced he'd ruin the day just by being his awkward, silent self.
But instead, Maralyn pulls up in her car, smiles at him, and that's it. Game over.
They married in 1963, and the dynamic was set immediately. Maralyn had this great line she used to tell people when they asked why they didn't want children. She'd say, "Maurice's problem enough."
It plays like a joke, and I'm sure people laughed, but in the context of the book, it feels deeper. It implies their relationship was this closed loop. They didn't need the outside world.
They barely tolerated it. And that desire to close off the world is what drove the whole grand plan. In the late 60s, Maurice felt stifled. He called it the cozy oppressions of middle-class England. He hated the taxes, the neighbors, all of it. So they made a radical decision.
They decided to sell everything.
And we mean everything. The house, the furniture, the car.
All of it.
Gone. They took the money and built a 31-foot sloop called the Orlin. This wasn't a holiday. This was a secession from society. And this brings us to a detail that drove me crazy reading about this. The radio.
Oh, this part is so frustrating. They deliberately chose not to install a radio transmitter. in the 1970s. Why on earth would you do that?
It was a philosophical stance. You have to get inside Maurice's head. He wanted freedom from outside interference. He wanted to navigate by the stars, like Captain Cook. He saw a radio as a leash, a tether back to the world he was trying to escape.
But practically, it meant if anything went wrong, if they hit a storm or got sick or, hit a whale, they were just ghosts. No one would know they were in trouble.
Precisely. It was this romantic ideal that created a massive, fatal flaw in their safety net.
So they set sail in June 1972. And at first, it works. They cross the Atlantic, enjoy the Caribbean. It all sounds idyllic. They make it to the Pacific. And then we hit March 4th, 1973.
The day everything changed. And the scene is set, so, normally, it was a completely calm morning. They were having breakfast.
And then impact.
A massive jolt that sent books flying off the shelves. It felt like a car crash.
They rush on deck, and the sight is just surreal. A sperm whale, maybe 40 feet long, so way bigger than their boat, is thrashing in the water right next to them.
And it wasn't attacking them, right? This wasn't Moby Dick.
No, and that's the tragedy of it. Maurice realized pretty quickly the whale was dying. The water was turning red. It had likely been hit by a whaler or a big ship, and in its blind death throes, it just collided with the Orlin.
So you have this massive dying animal on one side and the boat sinking on the other. Elmhirst describes the boat sinking gracefully. It's such a strange word to use.
It is. It just highlights the silence of it. The whale died, and the boat just slipped under. They had about 10 minutes to evacuate their entire lives.
And in that panic, human error kicks in hard. The go bag problem.
Right. They grabbed passports, diaries, a camera, but they left the fishhooks.
It's a haunting mistake. You grab the things that define your identity, your passport, your memories, but you forget the one tool you need to sustain your biology.
Speaking of the camera, this is one of those details that just sticks with you. Maralyn actually stopped to take a photo of Maurice as the boat was going down. I mean, that blows my mind. The ship is sinking, and she's snapping a picture.
It's a testament to her detachment, maybe, or just shock. But the photo exists. It shows Maurice, shirtless, in the dinghy, looking back at where his home used to be. The source describes his expression as taut blankness. He was just gone.
So the Orlin is gone. They're left with a life raft and a small dinghy. They are alone in the Pacific. And they drift for 117 days.
Almost 4 months. I mean, most survival stories are a few days, maybe a week. 117 days is an eternity.
And the physical toll is obvious, the saltwater sores, the starvation. But I want to focus on the psychological dynamic because this is where the book really shines. You'd think they would just comfort each other.
Right. Hold hands, get through it together.
Yeah.
But no, the stress polarized them. Their pre-existing personalities became their survival mechanisms. Maurice, the pessimist, he effectively resigned himself to death.
He just gave up, just like that.
He was convinced they were doomed. He spent days just staring at the horizon, waiting for the end. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't move. He retreated right back into that shell he built as a child.
And Maralyn, the woman who couldn't swim.
Maralyn refused to accept it. She became the boss. She realized that if she let Maurice wallow, he would die, and then she would die alone. So she bullied him.
Bullied. That's a strong word.
In a way, yeah. She cajoled him, she nagged him, she bolstered him, she forced a routine on him. It wasn't just about catching rain or looking for fish. It was about maintaining a structure of civilization. She kept a diary. She made them dress for dinner.
Even if dinner was raw turtle. It's fascinating. She literally nagged him into staying alive.
And Maurice, interestingly, he admitted this later, he needed that external authority. Remember, he grew up with a strict mother standing over him with a ruler. In a really twisted psychological way, Maralyn taking charge was a dynamic he knew how to respond to. It comforted him.
Wow, that is a deep psychological cut. It's like their dysfunction was the exact thing that saved them. So let's talk about the survival tactics, because while the psychology is deep, the physical reality was gross.
Incredibly gross and ingenious. They had no fishing gear, so they had to catch turtles by hand.
Which is ironic because the notes say they had kept a turtle as a pet.
Desperate times. They ate them raw meat, blood, everything. They drank the blood for hydration. They even used a dead turtle as a drag anchor to keep the raft stable in storms.
Then there's the shark story. This feels like it's straight out of an action movie.
It's Maralyn again. A shark was circling the raft, bumping it. Instead of cowering, she reaches into the water, grabs it by the tail, and hauls it onto the raft.
And then just throws it to Maurice.
Right. And Maurice, in a panic, has to kill it. He wraps it in a towel and basically hugs it to death to stop it from biting them. It's chaotic and terrifying and absurd.
But amidst all this, they also played games. I read about the paper dominoes.
Yes. They made a set out of paper and played endlessly. They also spent hours designing their dream house, discussing every detail. It was a way to project themselves into a future that might not exist.
But there were moments where that hope almost broke. The missed chances section is just heartbreaking. 7 ships.
7. Imagine the psychological impact. You see a silhouette on the horizon, you light your last flare, you wave your shirt, and the ship just keeps going. They didn't see them.
How do you bounce back from that? Especially Maurice.
Maurice usually collapsed. But Maralyn developed this coping mechanism. She had a vision. She became absolutely certain that they would be saved by a black Russian container ship.
So specific, a nationality and a color.
Yes. To Maurice, the realist, this was just nonsense. He'd get angry at her for having false hope. But for Maralyn, that irrational belief was the fuel she needed. It didn't matter if it was true. It mattered that she believed it.
It's logic versus faith in a survival scenario. Logic says, we are dying. Faith says, the Russian ship is coming.
Exactly. And in the end, she was half right. The ship did come.
June 30th, 1973, the Wolny.
A Korean fishing vessel. When they were spotted, Maurice and Maralyn were in a horrific state. Skeletal, legs swollen with edema, couldn't stand. Barely human.
And the interaction with the Korean crew is honestly one of the most touching parts of the story.
It really is. They're cared for by this crew who treated them with such tenderness. The details are lovely. The crew gave them choco pies and chewing gum.
Choco pies, that's such a specific comfort food.
It's a universal language of comfort. The crew even built a special canopy on deck for them. It was this profound cultural exchange born out of absolute crisis.
But as they head back to civilization, the warm, fuzzy feeling starts to fade, and the world sensation machine kicks in.
The media circus. And this is where you see a very 1970s brand of gender bias take over the narrative.
The newspapers couldn't handle the reality, could they?
Not at all. The headlines were all about the brave husband saving his wife. They kept getting Maurice's name wrong, calling him Michael. And Maralyn, she was often just his wife.
Which is infuriating, considering she was the one catching sharks and keeping them sane.
It completely erased her agency. The irony is, Maurice, to his credit, he tried to correct them. He was very open with the press. He told them, only the tenacity of my wife kept me alive.
That's a remarkably vulnerable admission for a man in 1973.
It is. He wasn't trying to be the hero. But the media didn't want a story about a strong wife and a passive husband. It didn't fit the script.
So they sell their story for about £10,000. Now, if this were a normal story, this is where they buy a cottage, stay on dry land, and never look at the ocean again.
You would think. But this is where the title A Marriage at Sea really lands. They didn't want the cottage. They wanted the raft.
They used the money to build another boat, Orlin II.
It baffles the mind, but you have to see it through their eyes. On land, they were awkward. They were survivors, freaks. The only place their relationship made sense was the sea.
So they go back out, sail to Patagonia. But the source material suggests this second voyage was darker. The vibe was different.
Much darker. See, on the raft, the hierarchy was determined by necessity. Maralyn led because Maurice couldn't. But on Orlin II, they were safe. And without the immediate threat of death, Maurice's difficult personality resurfaced.
And intensified.
Significantly. He became tyrannical. The outline mentions he started saying things like, I am God, on the boat. He bullied the crew members they brought along.
It's like without the check of immediate survival.
Precisely. The raft stripped them down to their rawest elements, and those elements fit together like a puzzle piece. But add the complexity of a real boat, a crew, and safety, and the puzzle stopped fitting.
That's tragic. Eventually, the voyages did end. They returned to England, and the end of their story is surprisingly quiet.
They just retreated into isolation, lived in a bungalow that was described as almost as austere as the boat, barely any furniture, just them.
Maralyn passed away from cancer in 2002, and Maurice's reaction to her death is really the final piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
He didn't just mourn her, he sort of ceased to function in the present tense. He spent his final years writing letters to a friend, but the letters were entirely about Maralyn and the past. He was reliving the drift over and over.
It suggests that for him, life effectively ended when she died. Or maybe life was only really vivid when they were suffering together on that raft.
It's a tragic but also beautiful testament to that dependency. It reframes the whole idea of compatibility. We think of a good marriage as having good communication and shared hobbies.
Right, healthy boundaries and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here, Elmhirst is showing us that sometimes compatibility is about shared trauma. It's about two jagged edges that lock together perfectly. It might not be healthy, but it was incredibly durable.
They were an army of two, Maurice and Maralyn versus the world. And even if the world didn't get them, they won on their own terms.
They did. They survived the whale, the ocean, the starvation, and the media. The only thing they couldn't survive was the separation of death.
That is quite the journey. From a printing press in Derby to a raft in the Pacific, and the strange psychology that kept them afloat, it really makes you think about what binds people together.
It does. Sometimes the perfect match isn't the one that looks good on paper, but the one that keeps you alive when the ship goes down.
A profound thought to end on. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.